All right, good evening, folks, and thank you for joining us here this evening. This has been nothing less than a very eventful day. There are things going on in the Baltics that should literally scare the shit out of everyone that lives in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland. We have told you for months that the Russians, along with the Belarusians, now one military force, have been building up troops, equipment, missiles, fighter jets, armored personnel carriers, tanks, artillery, anti-air defensive systems, underground bunkers, communications facilities, surveillance systems, improving airports, putting in fuel and lubricant facilities, also building medical facilities, training their public for combat firefighting and combat medic. We know that something is going on in the Baltic just simply from looking at this image. For those of you who were here last night, you will notice that the number of red dots and arrows on the screen is dramatically reduced. It's not because we're not paying for satellite tracking. It's because those military vessels have turned off their transponders. Why would they do such a thing? Well, very simply, they know that the Russians are coming. We can prove that to you. We'll start the story at 1900 hours Zulu yesterday evening. The Baltic was quiet. No military aircraft anywhere around other than one drone up here when a lone P-8 belonging to the United States Navy made its way into the Baltic. Now what we're going to do is we're going to play this at 40 times speed so as that you can see what transpired. As you will see, this P-8 is entering the Baltic at dark, which is highly unusual for P-8s. It's also highly unusual for the Kaliningrad airport to operate late at night. There is only one airport that is a public airport in Kaliningrad, but the United States knew something was up. How do we know that? They sent the P-8 in, and in addition, all of the naval vessels, NATO and everybody else, turned off all of their AIS transponders in the Baltic. So as the P-8 made its way into the Baltic Sea, it crossed over the Baltic and into Poland. Once in Poland, this aircraft knew that they were going to be operating in the Baltic for an extended period of time, so they decided to get refueled, which you're going to see coming up here in just a moment as Nacho turns their transponder on and launches out. They come to altitude, rendezvous with the P-8 so as that the P-8 can come in behind them, and then they refuel the P-8 as they are flying over Poland. After the refueling took place, the P-8 then returned to the Baltic. This is where the story gets very, very interesting. We covered this afternoon, and the reason being is what we are seeing is unprecedented. Kaliningrad only has a population of about 487,000 people. That's less than 500,000. In other words, the population of Kaliningrad is pretty small. But that doesn't stop the Russians from piling in tens of thousands of troops. For the last 6 months, the Russians have been flying armored personnel carriers, artillery, tanks, missile launchers, bombs, you name it, they've been flying it into Kaliningrad. We've been tracking it every day and every night, 24 hours a day for over 6 months. We're also tracking troops and equipment moving into the Baltics. or along the Baltics in Western Russia and in Belarus. So here you will see the P-8 returns to the Baltic. Now, if you thought that one lone P-8 out over the Baltic was interesting, well, you haven't really seen anything yet. Because now we also have another helicopter down here that's flying around from the Polish Air Force, having a look-see along the coast at what's going on in the Kaliningrad area. So as our P-8 starts making orbits and looking around, you will see that here in Kaliningrad, an aircraft will turn on their transponder. Yeah, it kind of looks like they found a sub out there, but we're going to get into that. So as they're flying around, now, just so you know, there's a lot going on over there, and we're going to get into that. But this is just the beginnings of it. Because there is an exercise, or actually, how shall I say, several exercises taking place in the area. So they went down low to drop some sonar buoys, and sure enough, they found something over there. Now, the interesting part about this is in September, Belarus will host an exercise with Russia called West 25 or Zapad 25. And this is directly related to exercise Interdiction 2025, also Search 2025, and Echelon 2025. In May of 2025, the Baltic Fleet already held major exercises, and now a new exercise has been called, and that's called July Storm. And that just began. And there you can see the P-8 looking for its submarine. Now, you may have noticed that almost all of the tanks that were in Ukraine have disappeared, but their production of tanks has not stopped. In fact, the Russians are producing a new T-90 tank about every day and have been for the last 2 years. That's close to 700 tanks that the Russians have produced, and they're taking them somewhere because they're not showing up in Ukraine. Now, the Russians have also been modernizing the western part of Russia and Belarus. They have built new railway bridges, they have new branch lines, and they have put in all kinds of other facilities there, and all of those branch lines of the railroad, well, they face to the west, towards the Baltics. They've also built large field hospitals. They've put in fuel storage facilities and lubricant facilities. They've shipped in massive amounts of ammunition to different depots, of which we have shown you, both in Belarus and in the Kaliningrad region. They have had civil defense exercises where they have trained their firefighters, paramedics, and civilians to fight fire and provide medical attention in wartime conditions. That's kind of an interesting thing to do. Also, Belarus has become part of the Leningrad military district, which means that Belarus and Russia are one and the same in military, and additionally, intercontinental ballistic missiles and nuclear missiles and nuclear bombs have been delivered to Belarus, with the pilots and launchers or rocketeers of those intercontinental ballistic missiles being trained in Russia, but they are part of the Belarusian military. Now, what's the interpretation? Well, we need to look at history. Russia attacked Ukraine originally in 2014 and again in 2022. Both of those invasions began under the auspices of a military exercise. Putin is not afraid of war. In fact, his military economy is already working at full capacity. and their entire pyramid of their economy is based on a military economy. And so the Russians are now producing ammunition and equipment in large scale. Now I need to back up here a little bit because I need to change my filter to represent all aircraft. So here's our P-8 again, flying around over the area, and we're going to see a commercial aircraft coming up at midnight start out from here in Kaliningrad. The interesting part is this guy's coming into Kaliningrad at 10:30. The other thing I saw was we had a couple aircraft come into Kaliningrad from the Sinai Peninsula, which I found very interesting as well. And we'll get into those. Now, the Russian Security Council is confident that Estonia, Lithuania, and the Latvians will not be of any resistance, at least not anything like the resistance of the Ukrainians. And thus, they feel that they can take Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania with very little expense or effort. So much so that Lavrov has said that they are going to send little green men into the Baltics and into Poland to act as saboteurs and take Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Additionally, Belarusian commanders have said they're going to take the northeastern part of Poland in this action, and we've got them on a video of Lenshenko being briefed, and his commanders are telling him that they can take the northeastern part of Poland. Now here you'll see at 11:30 at night, when this airfield is closed, just like when the other plane landed, we've now got an aircraft that left out and is headed back towards Moscow, or Volgograd in this particular case. Now, the interesting part about all of this is, over the next 18 hours, 60 aircraft will fly into this airport. That's basically twice the number of aircraft that normally come into this airport. And here you see we have another one coming out of Kaliningrad. Now we're going to have 60 more come in over the next 18 hours. That's over 10,000 troops are being delivered just to Kaliningrad alone. Now we're going to speed this up just a little bit so as that you guys can see all of these planes coming in and going out. At one time today, you could almost hopscotch across the Baltic on the planes that were going from Russia into Kaliningrad. And we're only going to track the planes going into Kaliningrad. So as the sun starts coming up here, we're going to start seeing the planes rolling out of Russia and going into Kaliningrad. It's been a rather exciting morning here this morning, or day, in Kaliningrad. And this is just the beginning of what's going on here. There's another one coming out of Kaliningrad. Here's another one that just landed there. Let's back this up a little bit. These are coming from the Sinai Peninsula. There's two of them that came in down here from the Sinai. Gee, I wonder what they're doing there. So as the sun comes up, well, he's going to Moscow, wrong one. He's going to Kaliningrad. Shamir al-Sheikh is where this one came from. But he's not alone. There will be another one coming from the same airport and landing, at 2 o'clock in the morning in Kaliningrad. Wonder why that would be. 2 o'clock in the morning. There's another one going into Kaliningrad. Same airport. Same origination, same destination. Again, this one's at 2:30 in the morning in Kaliningrad. So these are just the initial aircraft that are coming in. Yes, the airport's closed. Yeah, this airport is closed from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. So why are all these planes coming in the middle of the night to an airport, like you said, that is closed? But that's not the big part. As the day progressed on, at 4 a.m., here they come. Out of Moscow. Kaliningrad, Kaliningrad. And as the day progressed, more and more and more planes from Mother Russia started heading towards Kaliningrad. And this went on for 18 hours straight. The Russians were flying planes into Kaliningrad, 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 Kaliningrad. As you can see, it doesn't stop. And this went on for 18 hours straight. How many men are on those planes? More than 10,000. In fact, one of these planes is a Boeing 777. Kaliningrad. 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 You might start to be catching on to what is transpiring here as we are seeing this massive number of aircraft headed for Kaliningrad. And Kaliningrad. Did I say there were planes going for Kaliningrad? There's another, Kaliningrad. Gee, another going to Kaliningrad. And gee, I wonder, he's going to Kaliningrad. 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 So this went on, like I said, for 18 hours today. Where are they going? Well, they're going into Kaliningrad. Specifically, they are flying into this airport right here. Now, this really doesn't look like an airport that's big enough to support 60 airplanes in 18 hours. And you're right, it's not. They're bringing them over here and unloading them. They're pulling them up to each one of these spots right here and unloading them. They're filling this airport up. Look, they don't have that many ramps here to put aircraft in. They're just unloading these guys and spinning the plane around and sending it back empty. That's the only way that they can take this many aircraft coming in. I mean, look at them here. They're coming in waves. They're literally pulling the guys off and turning the plane around. They're not even reloading it. It's going back empty. And they're delivering them into this airport right here. Now, they've got bomb shelters all over. They have built new ammunition depots. These bunkers are full of missiles. And if you want to know how big these bunkers are, these are S-400 missile launchers coming out of these bunkers. That gives you an idea of how big each bunker is. Look at all of them. Now, the interesting part about this is nuclear bombs. That's what this is made for. And they have a nuclear bomb production facility, which is, wrong one, which is right here. This has already been proven that this is a nuclear bomb production facility. Now, there are 10,000 troops delivered into Kaliningrad just today. What's going to be their opposition to those 10,000 troops that are just in Kaliningrad, not counting what's in Western Russia, not counting what's in Belarus? Well, that's simple. In Estonia, we've got a whopping 987 Brits. Yeah. In Latvia, we've got 1,107 Canadians. And in Lithuania, we've got 1,271 Germans. Now, if you get down into Poland, hey, we've got 1,114 Americans. That equals up to about 4,000 troops. Guess what? The Russians moved in more than twice as many as that just today. And they've been moving them in for weeks. In addition to that, do you think NATO's concerned about it? You're damn right they are. If this wasn't such a big deal, why would all of the transponders of the over 100 ships we showed you yesterday, why did they turn off all of their transponders overnight? We've got it on. We've got the satellite on. These are the ones being tracked by satellite, the ones that keep blinking on and off. So we're paying for the satellite service, and I'm glad I did, even though it was $130 per month. I paid for that because I wanted to see this. I knew this was coming. That's why I bought satellite service 2 days ago. So this is only going to get worse the longer that we go. And Lavrov, well, he had something to say about it. We're going to show it to you here. Because, of course, Lavrov has always got something to say. And so with that, here is Mr. Lavrov and his statement that the Europeans has gone mad with its campaign against the Russian Federation.
Остервенело, другого слова подобрать не могу. Даже напрашивается каламбур, они сейчас являются частью международного оборзения по отношению отношению к Российской Федерации, всячески заводят свои народы, внушают им в духе геббельсовской пропаганды, что Россия – это извечный враг, экзистенциальная угроза, что Россия вот-вот нападет на Европу, поэтому нужно забыть про социальные проблемы, про провалы в экономике, забыть про процесс деиндустриализации, который наблюдается в том числе и в Германии, и в других европейских странах, и все силы, все средства, все налоги бросить исключительно, остервенело, другого слова.
So they're trying to convince everybody that this is a conspiracy against Russia, even though Russia is famous for attacking other countries for absolutely no reason. Now, the best news today is the fact that the Ukrainians have been delivering the pain to the Russians in, well, a large amount of pain. And that is a good thing. Now, the Russians are being prepared for this military action. They've got hundreds of ships that they are bringing together to carry out this military operation in the Baltics. They've got ships in the Red Sea. They've got ships, in the Black Sea, in the Carpathian Sea, and in the Baltics, ready to carry this out. And I've got it right here for you, if you will give me one moment here. I've got video of one of their hovercraft preparing for this. And that is right here. So they're practicing. They've got over 160 ships. They've got over 150,000 troops, hundreds of airplanes. They are getting ready for military action. There's no other reason for them to be doing this in the Baltic and all of these other places. Now, the good thing for Ukraine is that the countries in NATO and in Europe are delivering weapon systems to Ukraine for air defense. So here is an example of the Iris air defense system that the Germans have delivered to the Ukrainians. And at the same time, the Ukrainians are delivering the pain to the Russians. This is an example of the drone attacks overnight. Here is another example of the drone attacks overnight. So the Russians aren't real happy right now because they are getting hammered by the Ukrainians. Additionally, the Russian fleet, as part of July Storm, has started their exercise. This is a look at that.